The women secretly banded together, endured hunger, illness, and captivity, and then, taking advantage of a tropical storm, escaped from a heavily guarded camp on the island. But what one of the women said plunged them all into shock and endless hell. Picture the year 1718. Trace your finger along the map from Jamaica to the Windward Passage, and imagine the smell of salt, wet oak, boiling pine tar, and black powder drifting across the Caribbean as a peaceful merchant convoy disappeared beneath a line of black flags rising over the morning horizon. Within minutes, the silence was shattered by the thunder of bronze cannon firing solid iron shot through thick oak planking, sending razor-sharp splinters across crowded decks. The pirate sloops, built for speed with shallow drafts and sharp bows, closed the distance before the merchant captains could organize a proper defense. Smoke swallowed the sea as grappling hooks slammed into the railings and dozens of armed raiders poured aboard with pistols, cutlasses, and boarding axes. The battle itself lasted less than 20 minutes, but its consequences would haunt hundreds of women for the rest of their lives. Mothers were separated from children during the confusion. Wives watched their husbands disappear into the smoke, and entire families were forced onto pirate vessels while their homes, possessions, and futures vanished behind them. Some prisoners were destined for ransom, others for distant slave markets, while many had no idea whether they would ever see land again. Locked inside overcrowded cargo holds that smelled of mold, stagnant seawater, and rotting timber, they survived on spoiled biscuits crawling with insects, foul rainwater collected in cracked barrels, and whatever scraps remained after the pirate crew had eaten. As the days passed, fear became more powerful than hunger because every sunrise brought another rumor about what the captain intended to do with his captives. No one knew which stories were true, but everyone understood that the attack had destroyed far more than a merchant convoy. It had erased the ordinary lives of hundreds of innocent women forever, replacing certainty with endless fear upon the open sea. The pirate fleet remained at sea for weeks, avoiding the busiest shipping lanes while searching for new prizes, and every passing day pushed the prisoners closer to despair. The women were packed tightly below deck where barely any sunlight reached through the narrow hatch, forcing them to breathe air heavy with mildew, bilge water, sweat, and decaying cargo. Fresh water became so scarce that each captive received only a few mouthfuls a day, while meals consisted of worm-infested hardtack, spoiled salted meat, or nothing at all. Some trapped rats that emerged from the dark corners of the hold, roasting them over tiny hidden flames whenever the guards became drunk enough to neglect their watch. Others chewed damp leather, softened wood, or bitter roots found inside damaged cargo simply to silence the unbearable pain of starvation. Above them, the pirates argued over the fate of the prisoners. Wealthy families might pay enormous ransoms for daughters or wives. Younger captives could be sold in distant ports, and the remaining women would become unpaid labor aboard captured vessels until another buyer appeared. Every conversation overheard through the deck planks deepened the terror below. Mothers tried to comfort frightened children despite having no answers themselves, while older women quietly taught the younger prisoners how to appear exhausted, ill, and older than they truly were whenever guards inspected the hold. They covered their faces with soot, rubbed salt into their clothing, and deliberately hid their strength, believing that becoming invisible offered the only chance of surviving the endless voyage through waters ruled by the Black Flag. Days slowly turned into weeks as the pirate squadron anchored inside a remote Caribbean bay, hidden behind towering cliffs and dense mangrove forests, where no naval patrols dared to search. For the first time since their capture, the women were forced onto land, but freedom remained an illusion. Armed guards surrounded the camp while makeshift shelters of torn sailcloth and driftwood became temporary prisons beneath the tropical sun. The pirates sorted their captives into groups, separating families yet again, and recording names beside crude ledgers that determined who might be ransomed, who would be sold, and who would remain valuable hostages until another wealthy merchant vessel crossed their path. Every scream echoing through the camp reminded the prisoners that their old lives had vanished forever. Those who once lived comfortably in prosperous port towns now washed clothes in muddy streams, gathered firewood beneath constant watch, and survived on spoiled grain, bitter roots, rotten fruit, and whatever fish they could secretly catch along the shoreline. Disease spread quickly through the overcrowded camp, as infected wounds, fever, and exhaustion weakened nearly everyone. Yet beneath the appearance of complete submission, several women began quietly planning their survival. They memorized the guards' routines, counted the boats tied along the beach, watched which pirates became careless after drinking rum each evening, and discovered narrow jungle paths leading away from the camp. The pirate attack had stolen their homes, their families, and their future, but it had not destroyed their determination to escape. And that silent determination slowly became the greatest threat to the men who believed fear alone would keep hundreds of prisoners under control. One humid evening, as thunder rolled across the distant Caribbean, and most of the pirate crew celebrated another successful raid with stolen rum, music, and gunfire into the night sky, the women put their desperate plan into motion. They had spent days hiding sharpened shells, broken barrel hoops, and small knives stolen from the camp kitchen beneath piles of seagrass. When darkness covered the shoreline, a handful quietly slipped between the shelters and cut the ropes securing several pirate longboats, while others created a diversion by overturning food barrels near the center of the camp. Within seconds, angry shouts erupted as drunken pirates rushed toward the commotion, believing thieves had stolen part of their treasure. The confusion spread rapidly. Horses panicked, powder crates crashed to the ground, and frightened prisoners scattered in every direction. Using the chaos as cover, dozens of women ran toward the beach carrying children in their arms, helping elderly captives over rocks, and dragging the wounded through the shallow surf. Some reached the boats, while others disappeared into the dense jungle where towering palms and tangled vines concealed them from their pursuers. The pirates quickly realized what was happening and opened fire with muskets. But darkness, smoke, and heavy rain turned every shot into little more than a desperate guess. The attack that had once stolen hundreds of lives was now creating something the pirates had never expected. Hundreds of captives refusing to remain victims, risking everything for the smallest chance of freedom. By sunrise, the pirate camp had become a scene of complete disorder. Half the longboats had vanished, supply barrels floated in the surf, and dozens of furious pirates searched every trail leading into the jungle. The escaping women knew they could not outrun experienced trackers forever, so they relied upon the landscape itself. They crossed streams to hide their footprints, covered abandoned campsites with fallen leaves, and traveled only beneath the dense canopy, where little sunlight reached the forest floor. Hunger returned with merciless force. They survived on wild fruit, bitter roots, shellfish gathered along hidden coves, rainwater collected inside broad leaves, and whatever crabs or small fish they could catch with sharpened sticks. Every strange sound in the jungle threatened to reveal their position, whether it came from wild animals or armed pirates moving through the undergrowth. Several groups became separated, yet each continued toward the distant coast where they hoped passing merchant ships might someday appear. Behind them, the pirate captain ordered relentless searches, not because of the prisoners themselves, but because their escape had shattered his reputation. News that hundreds of captives had slipped away would spread through every pirate haven in the Caribbean, turning fear into ridicule. The raid that had begun as another triumph beneath the black flag was slowly becoming a humiliating failure, while the women who had lost everything refused to surrender the only thing their captors had never managed to steal: the determination to reclaim their freedom. Weeks later, scattered groups of survivors finally reached Spanish outposts, isolated fishing villages, and passing merchant vessels after an exhausting journey across jungle, swamps, and open sea. Many had lost husbands, children, sisters, or friends during the pirate attack, and few would ever discover what became of those left behind. Their homes had been destroyed, their fortunes stolen, and their ordinary lives erased in a single day beneath the black flag. Yet their remarkable escape spread from harbor to harbor across the Caribbean, carried by sailors who could scarcely believe that hundreds of unarmed women had survived pirate captivity and escaped from a heavily guarded island camp. Some rebuilt their lives in distant colonies under new names, while others spent years searching for missing relatives taken during the raid. Although the scars of captivity never disappeared, neither did the memory of the courage they had shown when every reason for hope seemed lost. Long after the pirate camp had been abandoned and the jungle reclaimed every trace of the temporary prison, the story continued to be whispered among mariners as a reminder that the most devastating pirate attacks were measured not only by stolen treasure or sunken ships, but by the countless lives forever changed. For the women who survived, the raid ended long before they reached safety, but its shadow remained with them for the rest of their lives, proving that some victories at sea left wounds no passage of time could ever completely heal.